The taste of betrayal is bitter, like coffee gone cold in a forgotten cup. I stood there, frozen in our kitchen, staring at my phone screen as if somehow the images would change if I looked long enough. But they didn't. There was my husband of 15 years, Tyler Kendrick, pressing his lips against a woman who definitely wasn't me, in our downtown office. On the desk I had polished just hours earlier. My stomach twisted into knots as I watched their hands fumble with buttons and zippers. I turned off the phone, unable to watch anymore. The hidden camera had revealed exactly what I had feared but refused to believe. 2 months earlier, Tyler had started coming home later and later. At first, it was midnight, then 1 in the morning, and eventually, some nights he didn't come home at all. "I'm working late, Lauren. These clients don't operate on a 9-to-5 schedule," he would say, his tone suggesting I was being unreasonable for even asking. I believed him because I wanted to believe him. Tyler was a financial consultant who prided himself on being available to his wealthy clients whenever they needed him. And I was the dutiful wife who supported his career, who kept our home spotless, who waited up with dinner warming in the oven. "Lauren, I need you to clean the downtown office every Tuesday," he had announced one morning over breakfast, not even looking up from his phone. "I have important clients coming in, and I need the place to look perfect." It wasn't a request. It was an order. And like the obedient wife I had become over the years, I nodded and added it to my list of duties. The downtown office was small but elegant. A converted historic building with exposed brick walls, tall windows, and hardwood floors. Tyler had rented it 6 months ago, claiming he needed a professional space to meet clients, rather than the home office he'd used for years. I should have questioned it then. Why the sudden need for separation between work and home? Why the insistence that I never drop by unannounced? "You look tired," my best friend Natalie Lawson had commented when we met for coffee last week. Natalie and I had been friends since college, when we were both bright-eyed students with dreams bigger than ourselves. While I had fallen into the comfortable routine of married life, Natalie had pursued her passion for biology, eventually becoming a respected researcher at the university. Her lab work with insects and various creatures often led to fascinating, if sometimes unsettling, lunch conversations. "I'm fine," I had lied, stirring my latte absently. "Just busy with the usual." Natalie's sharp eyes had studied me carefully. Tyler still working those crazy hours? There was something in her tone that suggested she didn't quite believe his excuses either. I nodded, not meeting her gaze. "He's dedicated to his clients." "And what about his dedication to you?" she asked pointedly. When I didn't answer, she reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "Lauren, you know you can tell me anything, right?" That night, after Natalie's prompting had planted a seed of courage, I had finally confronted Tyler about his late nights. We were in our kitchen, the space that had once been the heart of our home, but now felt as cold and distant as our relationship. "I hardly see you anymore," I said, hating the pleading tone in my voice. "I feel like I'm living alone." Tyler had sighed dramatically, as if my concerns were an inconvenience. "I'm working, Lauren. Someone has to pay for this house and your shopping habits." The accusation stung. I hadn't bought anything significant for myself in months. "That's not fair," I whispered. "You know what's not fair?" His voice had risen. "Working my ass off while you sit at home all day, then coming home to complaints instead of support." He ran his hand through his salt and pepper hair, a gesture that once made my heart flutter, but now only highlighted the stranger he had become. "In fact, I'm thinking of putting a bed in the office. That way, I won't disturb your beauty sleep when I work late." A bed in the office. The words had echoed in my mind for days afterward. Each time I thought about it, a little more of my denial chipped away. And then came the final blow. "I need you to clean the office tomorrow," Tyler had said casually over dinner last night. "I have an important meeting Thursday evening, and everything needs to be perfect." He hadn't looked at me as he spoke, his attention focused on his phone as usual. "Will you be coming home afterward?" I asked, already knowing the answer. "Don't wait up," he replied, still not meeting my eyes. That night, after Tyler had fallen asleep, I slipped out of bed and called Natalie. My hands trembled as I dialed her number. "Can you come over tomorrow?" I whispered when she answered. "I need your help with something." The next morning, after Tyler had left for work, Natalie arrived with a small shopping bag and a determined expression. "You're doing the right thing," she assured me as she unpacked a tiny camera, cleverly disguised as a wall clock. "If he's innocent, no harm done. If not," she trailed off, her eyes reflecting the pain she knew I was feeling. "I feel horrible doing this," I admitted, as we practiced setting up the camera. "Like I'm the one betraying his trust." Natalie's expression hardened. "Trust is earned, Lauren. And right now, Tyler isn't earning anything except my suspicion." She squeezed my shoulder. "Remember, you're not crazy for questioning things that don't add up." Later that day, with Natalie's help, I installed the camera in the downtown office while cleaning. We positioned it to capture the main room, including the desk and the new futon Tyler had recently purchased, supposedly for power naps between client meetings. The camera connected to an app on my phone, which would alert me to any movement in the office. That night, Tyler texted that he wouldn't be home until morning. "Big client emergency," he claimed. "Might need to pull an all-nighter." At 11:30, my phone buzzed with a notification from the camera. With trembling hands, I opened the app and watched as Tyler entered the office, checking his watch impatiently. 15 minutes later, she arrived. Young, blonde, wearing a dress that clung to every curve of her body. Tyler greeted her with a kiss that left no doubt about the nature of their relationship. I watched, tears streaming down my face, as they moved to the futon, as his hands tangled in her long blonde hair, as 15 years of marriage crumbled before my eyes. And now, standing in my kitchen the next morning, I felt strangely calm. The initial shock had given way to a cold clarity. Tyler had made his choice. Now it was time to make mine. With steady hands, I picked up my phone and called Natalie. "You were right," I said when she answered. "He's cheating on me. Her name is Samantha Whitfield. I found her on his client list." There was a pause, then Natalie spoke, her voice gentle but firm. "I'm coming over. And Lauren, don't worry. We're going to get through this together." As I waited for Natalie to arrive, I looked around the immaculate kitchen I had maintained for years. Everything in its place, just the way Tyler liked it. I opened the cabinet where I kept my special occasion china and removed a delicate teacup. Then, with a deep breath, I let it fall from my fingers onto the tile floor. The sound of it shattering was strangely satisfying, a small act of rebellion, but it felt like the first real choice I had made in years. Natalie arrived 30 minutes later with a bottle of wine and a fierce determination in her eyes. I hadn't seen that look since our college days, when she'd defend her research projects with unwavering conviction. She found me sitting on the kitchen floor, surrounded by the shattered remains of what had once been Tyler's grandmother's teacup collection. "Well," she said, surveying the damage with raised eyebrows, "I see you've started the demolition without me." She carefully stepped over the porcelain fragments and slid down beside me, uncorking the wine with practiced ease. "I didn't bring glasses, but I'm guessing that's not going to be an issue today." I took the bottle from her and drank deeply, the rich Cabernet burning my throat. 15 years, Nat. 15 years of my life wasted on a man who couldn't even bother to cheat on me creatively. A bitter laugh escaped my lips. The downtown office? The late nights? Could he be any more of a cliché? Natalie took the bottle back and took her own swig. "Men like Tyler lack originality in everything they do," she said firmly, "including picking wives. You were always too good for him, Lauren. Always." We sat in silence for a moment, passing the bottle between us. Through the kitchen window, I could see our perfectly manicured backyard, another one of my endless projects to create the perfect home. The home that Tyler was rarely in and clearly didn't value. I want to hurt him, I whispered, surprising myself with the venom in my voice. I want him to feel even a fraction of what I'm feeling right now. Natalie studied me carefully, her scientist's eyes calculating. What exactly did you have in mind? I don't know. Divorce him. Take half of everything. His car. I sighed, my momentary anger deflating. But that's not really me, is it? I've spent so long being the perfect, supportable wife that I don't even know how to properly fall apart. Maybe you don't need to fall apart, Natalie said slowly. Maybe you need to stand up. Reclaim your power. Power? What power? I'm a 38-year-old housewife with no recent work experience and a cheating husband. I'm a walking statistic. Natalie grabbed my shoulders, forcing me to look at her. Listen to me, Lauren Kendrick. You are not a statistic. You are the woman who put herself through college while working 2 jobs. You're the woman who hiked the Appalachian Trail on our senior trip when everyone else quit halfway. You're the woman who has been keeping Tyler's life and business running smoothly for years while he takes all the credit. Her eyes blazed with conviction. You have power. You've just given it away for so long that you've forgotten what it feels like. Her words penetrated the fog of wine and heartbreak. She was right. Somewhere along the way, I had surrendered my identity, piece by piece, until I had become nothing more than an extension of Tyler's life and needs. So what do? I asked, my voice stronger. A slow, mischievous smile spread across Natalie's face. First, we clean up this mess before you cut yourself. Then, we plan. And Lauren, we're going to need to stop by my lab tomorrow. The next morning, with a slight hangover and a newfound resolve, I accompanied Natalie to the university where she worked. Her lab was in the basement of the science building, a sterile, fluorescent-lit space filled with equipment I couldn't name, and the faint smell of antiseptic. "Welcome to my domain," she said, swiping her ID card to let us into a restricted area, where the magic happens. "By magic, you mean experimenting on bugs," I replied, eyeing the numerous terrariums lining the walls. "Not just any bugs," Natalie corrected, leading me to a large glass enclosure near the back of the lab. "These are my special projects." I peered into the enclosure and immediately recoiled. Inside were hundreds of cockroaches, their glossy brown bodies moving in a disturbing, synchronized wave. "Madagascar hissing cockroaches," Natalie explained proudly, as if showing off her children. "Fascinating creatures, nearly indestructible. They can live without food for a month, survive without their heads for weeks, and they're resistant to radiation." "They're horrifying," I muttered, taking another step back. "They're perfect," Natalie countered. She turned to me, her expression serious. "You said Tyler is planning to spend tomorrow night at the office with Miss Homewrecker, right? After you clean it today?" A cold realization dawned on me. "Natalie, no, we can't." "We absolutely can," she interrupted, already pulling on latex gloves. "And we will. Do you remember sophomore year, when Brad Thompson humiliated me at the spring formal by showing up with another date after promising to take me?" I nodded, recalling Natalie's tear-stained face as she'd watched Brad dance with a freshman while she stood alone in her carefully chosen dress. "Remember what happened to his dorm room?" she continued, a gleam in her eye. "The mysterious ant infestation," I said slowly, the memory returning. His entire room was swarming with them. "He had to move out for a week while they fumigated." Natalie winked. "Sometimes nature just needs a little direction." 2 hours later, we left the lab with a sealed container of 100 cockroaches and a small electronic timer device that Natalie had rigged to open the container remotely. "It's set to open at 3 in the morning, she explained as we drove to the downtown office, "when they're both deep asleep and completely vulnerable." I gripped the steering wheel tightly. "This is insane. We could get in trouble." "For what? Accidentally transporting research specimens? These roaches aren't even considered pests in this state. They're exotic pets." She patted the container on her lap. "Besides, they're sterile. They can't reproduce. This is just a one-time shock and awe campaign." At the office, I cleaned as usual, while Natalie strategically placed the container under the futon, hidden from view, but positioned for maximum impact when it opened. We worked quickly, aware that Tyler could arrive at any moment. "You need to act normal when he gets home tonight," Natalie instructed as we left. "Don't give him any reason to suspect something's up." That evening, when Tyler returned home to pack an overnight bag, I played my part perfectly. The dutiful wife, asking no questions, making his favorite dinner as if everything was fine, as if I hadn't watched him betray me on camera just the night before. "I appreciate you understanding, Lauren," he said, as he packed toiletries in his designer Doppy kit. "This client is worth millions to us. Sometimes sacrifices have to be made." I bit back the bitter retort that rose to my lips and instead offered a placid smile. "Of course, dear. Your career is important." He kissed my cheek absently before leaving, the same lips that had been all over Samantha Whitfield. I resisted the urge to wipe my face until he was out the door. At 10 o'clock, Natalie arrived with popcorn and her laptop. "Time for the show," she announced, connecting to the hidden camera feed. We settled on the couch, an odd sense of anticipation building as we watched the empty office. At 11:15, Tyler arrived, immediately checking his appearance in the mirror by the door. He straightened his tie, applied breath freshener, and fluffed the pillows on the futon, the preparations of a man expecting company. At 11:30, there was a knock at the office door. Samantha entered, wearing a tight red dress that barely covered the essentials. They wasted no time with pleasantries, falling onto the futon in a tangle of limbs and discarded clothing. "I can't watch this," I said, turning away from the screen. Natalie fast-forwarded through their encounter, stopping when they finally settled down to sleep. Tyler wrapped around Samantha's significantly younger body in the small space of the futon, both of them naked and vulnerable. "And now we wait," Natalie said, checking her watch. 2 more hours until the grand finale." We passed the time reminiscing about our college days, about the women we had been before life had taken us in different directions, before I had allowed myself to become invisible in my own marriage. "You know," Natalie said thoughtfully, refilling our wine glasses, "after this is over, you should come stay with me for a while. Get some distance. Figure out what you want your life to look like without Tyler in it." The suggestion brought tears to my eyes. It was the first time I had allowed myself to truly contemplate a future without my husband. A future I would need to build from scratch at 38. "I don't know if I can do it, Nat," I admitted. "Start over. Be on my own again." "Of course you can," she replied with absolute certainty. "And you won't be alone. You'll have me." At precisely 3 in the morning, we turned our attention back to the laptop. The timer on the container activated with a soft click that wasn't audible on our feed. What was audible about 30 seconds later was the first scream. It started with Samantha, her high-pitched shriek cutting through the quiet office as the first cockroaches began crawling across her bare skin. Then Tyler, jolting awake in confusion that quickly turned to horror as he realized what was happening. "What the fuck?" he yelled, jumping up and swatting frantically at his body. "What the fuck is happening?" Samantha was already off the futon, hysterically trying to brush the insects from her hair and body, while simultaneously attempting to locate her clothes in the dark. "They're everywhere! Oh my God, they're everywhere!" The panic escalated as more roaches emerged, scattering across the floor, climbing the walls, dropping from the futon onto their flailing bodies. Tyler slipped and fell hard on his backside, yelping as several roaches immediately crawled onto his exposed skin. Natalie and I watched in stunned silence, our hands covering our mouths to stifle inappropriate laughter at the chaos unfolding on screen. It was terrible. It was glorious. "I'm out of here!" Samantha screamed, hastily pulling on her dress inside out and grabbing her purse. "This is disgusting! This whole thing is disgusting!" She shoved her feet into her heels and yanked open the door, not even bothering to close it behind her as she fled. Tyler remained, frantically trying to kill the roaches with his shoes, with books from the shelves, with anything he could grab. But there were too many, and they were too fast. His face contorted with disgust and rage as he finally gave up, pulling on his pants and shirt with jerky movements. "Holy shit," Natalie whispered beside me. "I didn't expect her to run out like that. Do you think she'll come back?" I watched as Tyler, now partially dressed, but still swatting at phantom insects on his skin, sank onto the edge of the futon with his head in his hands. For a brief moment, I felt a twinge of pity. Then I remembered the look on his face as he'd kissed Samantha, the casual way he'd lied to me for months, the years I'd spent making his life comfortable while he made mine lonely. "No," I said firmly. "I don't think she's coming back. And tomorrow, neither am I." The next morning, I awoke on Natalie's couch with a strange sense of lightness. Despite the emotional hurricane of the past few days, I felt oddly calm, as if the release of those cockroaches had somehow released something within me as well. I stretched, hearing Natalie moving around in her kitchen. "Morning, Revenge Queen," she called, appearing with 2 steaming mugs of coffee. "How did you sleep?" "Better than I have in months," I admitted, accepting the coffee gratefully. "No more lying awake wondering where my husband is or what he's doing. Because now you know exactly what, and who, he's doing," Natalie said bluntly, sitting beside me. "So, what's the plan for today?" I took a sip of coffee, savoring its rich bitterness. "I need to go home and pack some things. Then I need to decide if I'm telling Tyler I know, or if I'm just leaving." "You should definitely tell him," Natalie said firmly. "Not about the roaches, obviously, but about the affair. He doesn't get to slink away from this without facing you." My phone buzzed on the coffee table, Tyler's name flashing on the screen. I showed it to Natalie, who nodded encouragingly. Taking a deep breath, I answered. "Hello? Lauren?" Tyler's voice was frantic. "Where are you? I came home and you weren't here. You didn't leave a note or anything." The concern in his voice might have fooled me a few days ago. Now, it just sounded hollow. "I stayed at Natalie's last night, girls' night." The lie came easily, which was ironic considering the circumstances. Oh, his relief was palpable. "Well, something insane happened at the office. I had this late meeting that ran long, so I crashed on the futon, and in the middle of the night, the place was suddenly crawling with these giant cockroaches. It was like a horror movie." I caught Natalie's eye, and she pressed her lips together to keep from laughing. "That sounds terrible," I said, keeping my voice neutral. "Are you okay?" "Yeah, just freaked out. I'm going to have to call an exterminator. The whole place is contaminated now." He paused. "Can you come home? I could really use some support right now." The audacity of his request almost made me laugh out loud. Instead, I kept my voice level. "Actually, Tyler, we need to talk. I'll be home in an hour." "Talk? About what?" His tone sharpened immediately, defensive. "We'll discuss it when I get there." I hung up before he could respond, turning to Natalie with a determined expression. "I'm going to confront him." "That's my girl," she said, squeezing my shoulder. "Want me to come with you?" I shook my head. "This is something I need to do alone, but maybe keep your phone handy." An hour later, I pulled into our driveway, noting with grim satisfaction that Tyler's expensive car was parked haphazardly, as if he'd been in a hurry. Our house, the showpiece colonial that had eaten up so many of my hours in maintenance and decoration, suddenly looked like a stranger's home to me. A beautiful prison I had willingly entered and maintained. Tyler was pacing in the living room when I entered, still wearing yesterday's rumpled clothes. His hair was disheveled, and dark circles shadowed his eyes. He looked up when I walked in, relief washing over his face. "Thank God you're home," he began, moving toward me as if to embrace me. I stepped back, maintaining distance between us. "I saw you, Tyler." He froze, confusion flickering across his face. "What do you mean?" "I saw you with her, with Samantha." I kept my voice steady, surprising myself with my composure. "At the office. On the futon I helped you pick out." His expression cycled rapidly through shock, denial, and finally, calculation. "Lauren, I don't know what you think you saw. Don't. I cut him off sharply. Don't you dare try to gaslight me. I installed a camera in the office. I have video of you two together. I know exactly what I saw. Tyler's face hardened. You spied on me? What the hell, Lauren? That's an invasion of privacy. I laughed then, a genuine laugh born of pure disbelief. An invasion of privacy? You've been sleeping with another woman in an office I clean every week, and you're concerned about privacy? It's not what you think. He tried again, switching tactics. Samantha and I, it's just physical. It doesn't mean anything. It doesn't change how I feel about you or our marriage. Each word was like a knife, twisting deeper. Not because I believed him, but because I realized how little he respected me. How little he had always respected me. You're right about one thing, I said quietly. It doesn't change our marriage. Because our marriage was already broken. I just didn't want to see it. Tyler's expression softened, seeing an opening. Baby, we can fix this. I'll end things with Samantha. I'll get counseling. Whatever you want. What I want, I said, looking him directly in the eyes, is a divorce. The word hung in the air between us, solid and irrevocable. Tyler's face flushed with anger. You don't mean that. You're upset, but you're not thinking clearly. Actually, I'm thinking clearly for the first time in years. I moved past him toward the stairs. I'm going to pack some things. I'll be staying with Natalie for a while. He followed me up to our bedroom, his voice rising in frustration. You can't just walk away from 15 years, Lauren. What about everything we've built together? What about this house? Our life? I pulled a suitcase from the closet and began methodically filling it with clothes. You walked away first, Tyler. You just didn't have the courage to tell me. This is Natalie's influence, isn't it? His tone turned nasty. She's always been jealous of our marriage. She's filling your head with feminist bullshit about independence. I paused, a sweater half folded in my hands. Natalie has been nothing but supportive of me, of us, for years. Don't you dare try to blame her for your mistakes. She doesn't care about you, Lauren. Not like I do. She just wants to drag you down to her level. Bitter and alone. The comment stung, not because it was true, but because it revealed how little Tyler knew about my friendship with Natalie, how little he knew about me at all. Natalie is successful, respected in her field, and lives her life on her own terms, I replied calmly. If that's being dragged down, then please, drag away. I continued packing, moving to the bathroom to collect my toiletries. Tyler followed, his desperation growing. Where am I supposed to go? The office is infested with those disgusting roaches. I can't stay there now. That sounds like a personal problem, I said, zipping up my toiletry bag. Maybe Samantha has room at her place. His face darkened. She's not returning my calls, not after last night. I bit back a smile, thinking of Samantha fleeing the office in terror. How unfortunate for you. As I finished packing, Tyler's tactics shifted again. He sat heavily on the edge of our bed, his head in his hands. I made a mistake, Lauren. A terrible mistake. But I love you. I've always loved you. For a moment, my resolve wavered. 15 years is a long time to share your life with someone. There were good memories mixed with the bad. Holidays, trips, quiet moments that had once seemed meaningful. But then I remembered the cold dismissal in his voice when I'd expressed my loneliness, the casual way he'd lied to my face day after day. I'm sorry, Tyler, I said, closing my suitcase. But love without respect isn't love at all. It's just habit. I carried my suitcase downstairs, Tyler trailing behind me, his pleas growing more desperate. What am I supposed to do about the house? About bills? About everything? I turned to face him one last time before leaving. You're a 44-year-old man, Tyler. Figure it out. I did all the cooking, cleaning, scheduling, and managing of our lives for 15 years. Consider this your crash course in adulting. As I drove away, watching our house recede in the rearview mirror, I felt a complex mixture of emotions: grief for what was lost, fear of the unknown future, but predominantly a surprising sense of freedom. For the first time in years, my life was entirely my own to shape. Natalie was waiting on her porch when I arrived, 2 glasses of iced tea sweating on the small table beside her. "How did it go?" she asked as I climbed the steps. "About as well as you'd expect," I replied, sinking into the chair beside her. "He tried every trick in the book: denial, blame, guilt, manipulation. Even tried to turn me against you." Natalie snorted. "Classic. When all else fails, blame the feminist friend." She handed me a glass of tea. "Did you tell him about the roaches?" I shook my head, smiling slightly. "No, but he told me all about the mysterious infestation that ruined his late meeting last night." I took a long sip of tea. "Apparently, Samantha isn't returning his calls." "I bet she isn't," Natalie chuckled. "Nothing kills romance faster than seeing your lover covered in giant, hissing cockroaches." We sat in comfortable silence for a moment, watching the late afternoon sun filter through the trees in Natalie's front yard. Her house was smaller than the one I shared with Tyler, but it was undeniably a home, filled with books, plants, and personal touches that reflected her personality. "You can stay here as long as you need," Natalie said, as if reading my thoughts. "The guest room is small, but it's yours." "Thank you," I said, feeling tears prick at my eyes. "For everything. For believing me when I didn't even believe myself." "That's what friends are for," she replied simply. "To see us clearly when we've lost sight of ourselves." The next few weeks passed in a blur of practical arrangements and emotional upheaval. I hired a divorce attorney, a sharp-eyed woman named Patricia Montgomery, who specialized in high-asset divorces and took an immediate dislike to Tyler after reviewing our case. "He's been hiding money," she informed me after our initial discovery phase. "Moving funds between accounts, underreporting income to make it look like his business is struggling when it's actually thriving." This revelation shouldn't have surprised me, but somehow it still did. "Can we prove it?" Patricia's smile was predatory. "Oh, yes, and when we do, he'll be lucky if he gets to keep his socks." Meanwhile, Tyler's life appeared to be unraveling without my constant support. According to mutual friends who still spoke to me, his appearance had become increasingly disheveled. The house, my immaculate house, was falling into disarray. His business was suffering because he kept missing appointments or showing up unprepared. He called me constantly at first, his messages cycling between anger, pleading, and remorse. I deleted them all without responding. Then, one rainy Tuesday afternoon, about a month after I'd left, he showed up at Natalie's house. I was alone, Natalie having left for a conference that morning. The doorbell rang while I was making lunch, and I opened it without checking, assuming it was the package Natalie was expecting. Instead, Tyler stood on the porch, soaking wet from the rain, looking like a shadow of his former self. His clothes were wrinkled, his face unshaven, his eyes bloodshot. "Lauren," he said, his voice breaking. "Please, can we talk?" Against my better judgment, I let him in, leading him to the kitchen where I handed him a towel to dry off. "You look terrible," I observed, maintaining my distance. "I feel terrible," he admitted, running the towel over his wet hair. "Everything's falling apart without you. The house is a mess. My clients are complaining. I can't sleep. I can't eat." He looked up at me, his eyes desperate. "I need you, Lauren. I miss you so much." "You miss what I did for you," I corrected gently. "You miss the convenience of having someone manage your life, while you did whatever you wanted." "That's not true," he protested, but the conviction in his voice was weak. "Samantha's gone. She said she couldn't be with someone who couldn't even keep his office clean." He laughed bitterly. "Turns out she was just using me for my money and status. She's already seeing someone else, some tech executive with a penthouse downtown." I felt a strange lack of satisfaction at this news. "I'm sorry to hear that. Are you?" he asked, searching my face. "Because this is your chance, Lauren. We can put this behind us. Start fresh. I've learned my lesson. I swear I'll never look at another woman again. For a brief moment, I considered it. The familiar is powerful, even when it's toxic. I thought about the security of our house, our joint accounts, the life I'd known for so long. Then I thought about the disrespect, the lies, the years of slowly erasing myself to fit into the narrow space Tyler had allowed me. No, Tyler, I said firmly. We can't go back. I don't want to go back. His face hardened. It's her, isn't it? Natalie's convinced you that you're better off alone. This isn't about Natalie. It's about me finally recognizing my own worth. I stood up, signaling that our conversation was over. I hope you find happiness, Tyler. I really do. But it won't be with me. As I showed him to the door, he turned to me one last time, his expression calculating. You know you can't make it on your own, right? You haven't worked in years. Your resume is a joke. In 6 months, you'll be begging to come back. The words were meant to wound, to plant seeds of doubt. A month ago, they might have succeeded, but now, they only reinforced my decision. Goodbye, Tyler, I said, closing the door firmly in his face. That evening, when Natalie returned from her conference, I told her about Tyler's visit. Are you okay? She asked, concern etched on her face. Actually, I am, I replied, surprised to find it was true. But he did say something that's been bothering me. He said I couldn't make it on my own, that my resume is a joke. Natalie frowned. That's just Tyler trying to undermine your confidence. I know, but he's not entirely wrong. What am I qualified to do after 15 years as a housewife? Who's going to hire me? Natalie was quiet for a moment, thinking. Then she brightened. You know, my cousin Sophie runs that little bakery downtown. She mentioned they're looking for help. It's not glamorous work, but it's a start. And you're an amazing baker. I considered this. It was true that baking had always been my stress relief during my marriage, the one creative outlet I'd maintained. Tyler had enjoyed the results, but dismissed the activity as a cute hobby. I could do that, I said slowly, at least until I figure out something more permanent. Exactly, Natalie encouraged. One step at a time. That's how you build a new life. That night, lying in Natalie's guest bed, I allowed myself to imagine a future entirely of my own making. It was terrifying, yes, but also exhilarating. Like standing at the edge of a precipice, afraid to jump, but knowing that flight awaited on the other side. The next morning, I woke up with a sense of purpose I hadn't felt in years. After a quick breakfast, I dressed carefully in one of the few professional outfits I'd packed. A simple navy dress that I hoped conveyed competence and reliability. Natalie had already left for work, but she'd texted me Sophie's number and a good luck message. I called Sophie immediately, my heart pounding as I explained who I was and that Natalie had suggested I reach out about the bakery position. Oh, yes, Natalie mentioned you might call, Sophie said warmly. Can you come in today for a chat? Say around 10? 2 hours later, I was standing in Sweet Endeavors, Sophie's charming downtown bakery. The space was small but inviting, with pale blue walls, white shelves laden with fresh pastries, and the intoxicating scent of vanilla and cinnamon hanging in the air. Sophie herself was a younger version of Natalie, the same intelligent eyes and quick smile, but with a gentler energy. So, Natalie tells me you're a fantastic baker, Sophie said, as she showed me around the kitchen. I enjoy it, I replied modestly. It's been more of a hobby than anything professional. Sophie nodded thoughtfully. Well, hobby or not, I need someone who can follow recipes precisely and handle the morning baking shift. It starts at 4:30 a.m., which isn't for everyone. I'm an early riser, I assured her, though the thought of a 4:30 a.m. start time was admittedly daunting. And I'm a quick learner. Tell you what, Sophie proposed, let's do a trial run tomorrow morning. Come in at 4:30, and we'll see how you do with our basic morning pastries. If it works out, the job is yours. I left the bakery with a mixture of excitement and terror. A real job. My first. in 15 years. The practical part of my brain immediately began calculating the logistics. I'd need to be in bed by 8 tonight to get enough sleep. I'd need an alarm, proper shoes for standing all day. My phone buzzed with a text from Tyler. The exterminator came today, said it was the worst infestation he'd ever seen. Cost me $2,000. This is what happens when you're not here to take care of things. I deleted the message without responding. His problems were no longer mine to solve. That night, I barely slept, anxiety and anticipation keeping me awake until well past midnight. When my alarm blared at 3:45 a.m., I dragged myself out of bed feeling groggy, but determined. I left a note for Natalie explaining where I'd gone and quietly slipped out into the pre-dawn darkness. The streets were eerily quiet as I drove to the bakery. When I arrived, Sophie was already there, unlocking the door with a travel mug of coffee in hand. "Morning," she greeted cheerfully. "Ready to bake?" The next 4 hours were a blur of flour, butter, and precise measurements. Sophie worked alongside me, demonstrating each recipe once before letting me try on my own. We made croissants, muffins, scones, and cinnamon rolls, dozens of each, all needing to be ready by the time the bakery opened at 9. By 8:30, my lower back was aching. Flour dusted every surface of my clothing, and my hair was plastered to my forehead with sweat. But the cooling racks were filled with perfectly golden pastries, their buttery aroma filling the kitchen. Sophie inspected my work with a critical eye, breaking open a croissant to check the layers, tasting a corner of a blueberry muffin. "Well," she said finally, "I think we found our new morning baker." Relief and pride washed over me in equal measure. "Really? Even though I dropped that entire tray of scones?" Sophie laughed. "Everyone drops a tray now and then. What matters is that you didn't panic, and you immediately started making more. That's the kind of resilience we need here." We discussed salary, modest but fair, hours, brutal but consistent, and benefits. None yet, but possible in the future. By the time I left at noon, I was officially employed for the first time since before my marriage. I texted Natalie the good news from my car, too excited to wait until I got home. "I got the job, starting tomorrow." Her reply came immediately. "Yes, celebration dinner tonight. My treat." As I drove back to Natalie's house, I passed the turnoff that would have taken me to my old neighborhood, to the colonial with the manicured lawn and Tyler's luxury car in the driveway. For a brief moment, I wondered what he was doing, whether the house was truly falling into disarray without me. Then I deliberately turned my thoughts away. That life was behind me now. The first few weeks at the bakery were physically punishing. My body, accustomed to the relatively gentle tasks of housekeeping, rebelled against the hours of standing, the heavy lifting of flour bags, the repetitive motions of kneading and rolling. Each night, I collapsed into bed with muscles screaming, only to drag myself up again before dawn the next day. But there was something deeply satisfying about the work. The quiet meditation of the early morning kitchen, the precise dance of timing each batch, the pride of seeing customers lined up for pastries I had made with my own hands. For the first time in years, I was creating something that was entirely my own. Sophie proved to be a patient mentor, teaching me new recipes each week and gradually giving me more responsibility. By the end of the first month, I was handling the morning baking shift entirely on my own, allowing Sophie to focus on custom orders and the business side of things. "You're a natural," she told me one afternoon as we cleaned up the kitchen. "Are you sure you haven't done this professionally before?" I shook my head, smiling. "Just years of stress baking while my marriage fell apart." Sophie laughed, then grew serious. "Natalie told me a little about what happened. I'm sorry you went through that." "Thanks," I said, scrubbing a particularly stubborn bit of caramelized sugar from a baking sheet. "It was awful, but honestly, I'm happier now than I've been in years." And it was true. Despite the physical exhaustion, the modest paycheck, and the uncertainty of my future, I felt more alive than I had in my comfortable, secure marriage. Each small victory, mastering a difficult pastry technique, receiving compliments from regular customers, depositing my first paycheck into my new bank account, built my confidence in ways I hadn't anticipated. One morning in late April, about 2 months after I'd started at the bakery, I was experimenting with a new pudding recipe during a rare quiet moment. The bell above the door chimed, and I looked up to see a delivery man carrying a large arrangement of white lilies. "Delivery for Lauren Kendrick?" he announced, glancing around the empty shop. "That's me," I said, wiping my hands on my apron and coming around the counter. After signing for the flowers, I opened the small card tucked among the blooms. "I miss you. Please come home. We can work this out. Love, always, Tyler." I stared at the card, feeling a complicated mix of emotions. Not longing, as Tyler had surely intended, but a strange sadness for the man who still didn't understand that grand gestures couldn't replace genuine respect and honesty. Sophie emerged from the back room, eyebrows raised at the elaborate arrangement. "Secret admirer?" "Ex-husband," I corrected, handing her the card. "Still trying." She read it and rolled her eyes. "Men, they think flowers erase cheating. These particular flowers are also my least favorite," I noted. I mentioned it multiple times over 15 years, but he never remembered. He just buys what the florist suggests is romantic. I carefully removed the card, tore it in half, and dropped it in the trash. Then I rearranged the lilies in a vase for the front counter. No sense in wasting perfectly good flowers, though. They'll brighten up the shop. That evening, Tyler called while I was helping Natalie prepare dinner. I stared at his name on my phone screen, debating whether to answer. "You don't have to talk to him," Natalie reminded me, chopping vegetables with perhaps more force than necessary. "I know," I sighed, "but ignoring him forever isn't realistic. We still have the house to deal with. And the divorce proceedings?" I answered the call, putting it on speaker so Natalie could hear. "Lauren?" Tyler's voice was soft, intimate. "Did you get the flowers?" "I did," I replied neutrally. "Thank you." "Did you read the card?" "Yes." "Tyler, the flowers are beautiful. They don't change anything." There was a pause. "I sold the Mercedes," he said abruptly. This was unexpected. Tyler loved that car, had spent weekends washing and waxing it, had named it the Duchess. "Why?" I asked, genuinely curious. "I needed the money," he admitted, his voice small. "The business is struggling. Turns out you were doing a lot of the administrative work I didn't even realize needed doing. Client files are a mess. I've missed appointments. People are taking their investments elsewhere." Natalie caught my eye across the kitchen, mouthing, "Not your problem," silently. "I'm sorry to hear that," I said carefully, "but you're resourceful. I'm sure you'll figure it out." "That's just it, Lauren. I'm not figuring it out. I need you. Not just for the business, but for everything. The house is a disaster. I'm eating takeout every night. I've gained 15 pounds. I can't sleep without you next to me." There was a raw honesty in his voice I'd rarely heard before. For a moment, my resolve wavered. Then I remembered the camera footage, the casual lies, the years of taking me for granted. "Tyler," I said gently, "what you're describing isn't love. It's dependence. You miss the services I provided, not me as a person." "That's not true," he protested. "I miss your laugh. I miss your smile. I miss the way you always knew exactly what I needed before I did." "And that's exactly the problem," I replied. "Our entire relationship was built around your needs, your wants, your convenience. When was the last time you asked what I needed? What made me happy?" The silence on the other end was telling. "The divorce papers will be ready next week," I continued. "My lawyer will contact yours to arrange a meeting. I hope we can keep this amicable and fair." "Fair?" His voice hardened. "You want half of everything I built? How is that fair?" And there it was, the fundamental misunderstanding that had defined our marriage. Even now, he couldn't see that what we had built together. "Goodbye, Tyler," I said firmly, and ended the call. Natalie looked up from her chopping. You okay? I took a deep breath, surprised to find that I was. Yeah, actually, I am. Good. She nodded approvingly. Because I'm making my famous lasagna, and it requires your full attention and appreciation. Later that night, after dinner, Natalie and I sat on her back porch, watching fireflies blink in the gathering darkness. The spring air was heavy with the scent of honeysuckle and possibility. I think I need to find my own place soon, I said, breaking the comfortable silence. I can't keep imposing on you forever. Natalie turned to me, her expression serious. You know you're not imposing, right? Having you here has been great. I know, I assured her, and I'm incredibly grateful. But I need to stand on my own 2 feet completely. See if I can really do this. She nodded, understanding. Any ideas where you'll go? I hesitated, then shared the thought that had been percolating for weeks. Actually, I was thinking about that apartment above the bookstore on Maple Street. It's small, but the rent is reasonable, and I could walk to work. Oh, that would be perfect for you, Natalie agreed. When will you look at it? I have a viewing scheduled for Saturday morning. I turned to her, suddenly nervous. Will you come with me? I've never rented an apartment on my own before. Natalie's smile was warm. Of course I will. But for the record, I have complete faith that you could do it perfectly well without me. Her confidence in me was a balm to my still healing self-esteem. One step at a time, I reminded myself aloud. That's how you build a new life. One step at a time, Natalie echoed, raising her wine glass in a toast. To new beginnings. I clinked my glass against hers, feeling a surge of gratitude for this friendship that had become my anchor in the storm of change. To new beginnings. The apartment above the bookstore became my sanctuary. Small but full of character, with slanted ceilings, creaky wooden floors, and tall windows that flooded the space with morning light. After signing the lease, I faced the daunting task of furnishing it with my limited budget. The divorce proceedings had begun, but until everything was finalized, I had only my baker's salary to live on. It's like starting college all over again, I joked to Natalie as we scoured thrift stores and clearance sections. Except this time, I'm 38 with a bad back and no tolerance for ramen noodles. Despite the financial constraints, there was something deeply satisfying about choosing every item myself, each piece a reflection of my taste alone, not a compromise or an echo of someone else's preferences. A teal armchair with slightly worn armrests became my reading nook. Mismatched vintage plates added charm to my small kitchen. A second-hand oak table found at an estate sale became both my dining table and workspace. By early June, 3 months after leaving Tyler, I had created a home that was undeniably mine. It wasn't perfect. The bathroom sink dripped, the ancient radiator clanked in the night, and the neighbor's cat sometimes serenaded me at dawn. But every imperfection felt like freedom. One warm Saturday morning, I was experimenting in my tiny kitchen with a new pudding recipe. Since joining Sweet Endeavors, I had discovered a particular talent for custards and puddings. Something about the patience required for the perfect consistency appealed to me. Sophie had started featuring my creations as daily specials, and customers were taking notice. My phone rang, Patricia Montgomery's name flashing on the screen. My divorce attorney rarely called on weekends. "Lauren, good news," she said without preamble when I answered. "Tyler's lawyer reached out yesterday. They want to settle." I sat down on my teal armchair, heart racing. Settle? What are they offering? Half of everything, just as we requested. The house will be sold, and you'll split the proceeds. You'll get 50% of all investments and retirement accounts. And here's the kicker. Tyler has agreed to pay you an additional $30,000 to compensate for your contributions to his business over the years. I was momentarily speechless. After months of Tyler fighting every aspect of the divorce, this sudden capitulation seemed suspicious. "Why now?" I asked. "What changed?" Patricia's laugh was dry. Apparently, his business has taken a serious downturn. Several major clients have left, He's facing a potential lawsuit from one who claims he mismanaged their investments. He can't afford a protracted legal battle with you on top of everything else. A complicated mix of emotions washed over me. Vindication? Yes, but also a twinge of sadness for the man whose life was unraveling partly because of his own actions. "So, what happens now?" I asked. "We'll have a final meeting next Friday to sign all the paperwork. After that, you'll be officially divorced, and your financial future will be secure." After hanging up, I stood by the window, watching people stroll in and out of the bookstore below. Financial security had been one of my biggest fears about leaving Tyler. Now, with the settlement and my growing confidence in my baking abilities, the future suddenly seemed less frightening. The custard I'd been experimenting with had set perfectly. Smooth, creamy, with just the right amount of vanilla bean flecks visible. I scooped some into a small dish and savored a spoonful, the rich sweetness melting on my tongue. An idea began to form in my mind, nebulous at first, then taking clearer shape with each passing moment. I picked up my phone and called Sophie. "Hey, it's Lauren. Do you have a few minutes to talk? I've had an idea I'd like to run by you." The following Friday, I sat across from Tyler in Patricia's office, signing the final divorce papers. It was the first time I'd seen him in person since his desperate visit to Natalie's house months ago. He looked thinner, the lines around his eyes deeper, his once immaculate appearance now merely passable. As we worked through the stack of documents, Tyler spoke little, his signature becoming increasingly ragged as we progressed. Finally, we reached the last page. "So that's it?" he asked, looking up after signing his name for what seemed like the 100th time. 15 years undone with the stroke of a pen? I met his gaze steadily. "The marriage is over, Tyler. But the 15 years happened. They're part of both our stories now." His eyes softened slightly. "I really did love you, Lauren. In my way." "I know," I said gently. "But your way wasn't enough for me. And honestly, I don't think it was enough for you either." He glanced away, a muscle working in his jaw. "What will you do now?" he asked after a moment. "I'm partnering with Sophie at Sweet Endeavors," I replied, unable to keep the excitement from my voice. "We're expanding the business to include a dessert line featuring my puddings and custards. Sweet Endings, we're calling it." Something flickered across Tyler's face. Surprise, perhaps, or disbelief. "You're becoming a business owner? Just like that?" "Not just like that," I corrected him. "I'm investing my settlement money, starting small and growing gradually. Sophie's been mentoring me on the business side of things." He nodded slowly. "Well, good luck with that." "Thank you," I said, meaning it. Despite everything, I didn't wish him ill. "Good luck to you too, Tyler." As I gathered my copies of the divorce papers, he spoke again, his voice quieter. "For what it's worth, I'm sorry, Lauren. Not just for Samantha, but for everything, for not seeing you." I paused, hand on the doorknob, and looked back at the man I had once built my life around. "I hope you find what you're looking for, Tyler. And I hope that next time, you remember to look for her, too." Outside, the June sunshine was blinding after the dim conference room. I stood on the sidewalk for a moment, feeling the weight of 15 years lifting from my shoulders with each breath. My phone buzzed with a text from Natalie. "All done? Divorce celebration lunch awaits at Lucia's." I smiled and texted back. "On my way. Order champagne." 6 months later, on a crisp December morning, I stood in the newly expanded kitchen of Sweet Endeavors, putting the finishing touches on a batch of vanilla bean pudding parfaits for a holiday catering order. The Sweet Endings line had taken off beyond our expectations, with local restaurants now featuring our desserts and special orders flooding in for the holiday season. Sophie burst through the swinging doors, her cheeks flushed with excitement. "Lauren, the food critic from the Tribune is here. She wants to interview you about the puddings." My heart raced as I removed my apron and quickly checked my reflection in the stainless steel refrigerator door. I had given media interviews before, but they had always been as Mrs. Tyler Kendrick. smiling graciously while Tyler discussed his business achievements or our charitable contributions. This would be the first time I stood in the spotlight as myself, as Lauren Kendrick, pudding entrepreneur. The interview went surprisingly well. The critic, a sharp-eyed woman named Eleanor, asked thoughtful questions about my techniques and inspirations. When she asked how I had gotten into the dessert business, I gave her the abbreviated version: career change after divorce, discovered a passion for baking, particularly puddings and custards. "Well, whatever led you here, Boston is the better for it," Eleanor declared, finishing the last spoonful of her chocolate espresso pudding. "These are the best puddings I've tasted outside of Paris." The article appeared the following Sunday, featuring a full-color photo of me holding a tray of parfaits in the Sweet Endeavors kitchen. The headline read, "Sweet Endings: How Lauren Kendrick's Life Change Led to Boston's Most Delectable Desserts." Natalie brought 5 copies to our weekly dinner, her face glowing with pride. "Look at you, a business owner and now a local celebrity." I laughed, both embarrassed and pleased. "Hardly a celebrity, but it's a nice write-up." "It's more than nice," Natalie insisted. "It's validation of everything you've built this year." We were seated at my small oak table, now adorned with a holiday centerpiece and mismatched vintage candle holders. Through the window, snowflakes drifted lazily in the glow of street lamps. My apartment had evolved in the months since I'd moved in, becoming even more distinctly mine. Bookshelves lined with cookbooks and novels I'd always wanted to read. Walls decorated with prints I'd chosen. A prosperity plant Natalie had given me thriving in the corner. "I got a call from a publisher today," I confessed, as we cleaned up after dinner. "They want to talk about a pudding cookbook." Natalie nearly dropped the plate she was drying. "What? Lauren, that's amazing! What did you say?" "I said I'd think about it," I replied, still processing the opportunity myself. It seems so surreal. A year ago, I was just Tyler Kendrick's wife, organizing his calendar and managing his social life. Now, I'm being asked to write a cookbook. "Not just Tyler Kendrick's wife," Natalie corrected firmly. "You were never just anything. The difference is that now you know it too." Later that evening, after Natalie had left, I curled up in my teal armchair with a mug of hot chocolate, watching the snow accumulate on my windowsill. My phone buzzed with a text. A rare message from Tyler. "Saw your article in the Tribune. Congratulations, you proved me wrong." I stared at the message, remembering his dismissive words the day I'd left. "You can't make it on your own. In 6 months, you'll be begging to come back." Instead, 6 months later, I was thriving in ways neither of us could have imagined. I typed a simple reply, "Thank you." A moment later, another text from him. "Samantha and I are back together. She says hi." I couldn't help but laugh out loud at the transparent attempt to provoke jealousy. The Tyler of a year ago would have succeeded. The Lauren of today simply felt a distant pity. "I wish you both happiness," I replied sincerely, then set my phone aside. The new year arrived with a flurry of changes. The cookbook deal was finalized. Sweet Endings expanded to a second location in Cambridge. And Natalie, my steadfast friend through the darkest period of my life, received a prestigious research grant that would take her to Costa Rica for 6 months. "You'll be okay without me?" she asked, as we packed her numerous field research equipment the night before her departure. "I'll miss you terribly," I admitted. "But yes, I'll be fine. You've helped me find my strength, Nat. Now it's time for both of us to soar." We hugged fiercely, both teary-eyed but smiling. "Weekly video calls," she insisted, "and I want pudding samples mailed to me regularly." "Deal," I promised. "Now go discover some horrifying new insect to terrify cheating husbands with." After Natalie left, my life settled into a new rhythm. Mornings at the bakery, afternoons working on the cookbook, evenings exploring my new independence. I joined a book club, took a pottery class, started practicing yoga. Simple pleasures that had seemed impossible in my former life. 1 year to the day after I'd discovered Tyler's affair, I stood in the flagship Sweet Endeavors store for the launch party of my cookbook, Sweet Endings, Puddings, Custards, and New Beginnings. The small shop was packed with well-wishers, local press, and loyal customers eager to have their books signed. As I signed copy after copy, I caught glimpses of my journey in the faces around me. Sophie, who had taken a chance on a novice baker. Natalie, back from Costa Rica for the occasion, beaming with pride in the corner. Even Patricia Montgomery had come, purchasing 3 copies for her office. When the crowd thinned, a woman approached the signing table hesitantly. It took me a moment to recognize her, Samantha Whitfield, Tyler's mistress and apparently girlfriend once again. She looked nervous, clutching an unsigned copy of my cookbook. "Hi," she said awkwardly. "I hope it's okay that I came. I've actually become a big fan of your puddings. The salted caramel one is my favorite." I smiled, genuinely amused by the strange turns life takes. "Of course it's okay. Would you like me to sign your book?" She nodded, sliding it across the table. "Tyler doesn't know I'm here," she confessed. "He still gets upset when your name comes up." "That's his journey," I said simply, opening the book to the title page. "How would you like me to inscribe it?" "Just my name is fine," she replied. "Samantha." I considered for a moment, then wrote, "To Samantha, may you always find the sweetness you deserve. Lauren Kendrick." As I handed the book back, our eyes met briefly. In that moment, I saw something unexpected in her gaze, a flash of recognition, perhaps even respect. Woman to woman, beyond the roles of wife and mistress that had once defined our connection to each other. "Thank you," she said quietly, then added, "You know, you're not at all what I expected." I laughed softly. A year ago, I wasn't what I expected either. After she left, Natalie approached, eyebrows raised. "Was that who I think it was?" "Yes," I confirmed. "Life is strange, isn't it?" "The strangest," she agreed, linking her arm through mine. "Now, let's get out of here. The night is young. You're a published author, and I have 6 months of American cuisine to catch up on." Later that night, we sat on the roof deck of my building, wrapped in blankets against the winter chill, sharing a bottle of champagne and watching the city lights shimmer below us. In the distance, I could just make out the roof line of the house I had once shared with Tyler, the house that had recently sold, finalizing the last tangible connection between us. "Any regrets?" Natalie asked, refilling our glasses. I considered the question seriously. The past year had been the hardest of my life in many ways, filled with fear, uncertainty, and profound grief for the future I had once imagined. But it had also been transformative in ways I never could have anticipated. "Just one," I replied finally. "I wish I had found my courage sooner. But then again, maybe I found it exactly when I needed to." Natalie raised her glass. "To courage found right on time." "And to cockroaches," I added with a grin, clinking my glass against hers. The unexpected catalysts of change. We laughed together under the stars, the sound carrying on the winter air, the laughter of a woman who had lost everything and, in doing so, had finally found herself. If you enjoyed the story, leave a like and subscribe to the channel. And drop a comment below. What city are you watching from? And if your heart tells you to, feel free to leave me a tip on Buy Me a Coffee. Just check the first pinned comment. Thanks for keeping me company and for the coffee, and I'll see you in the next story.